My name is Myra. I'm 34 and I'm a certified public accountant, which means I spend my days chasing numbers that don't add up. On my daughter's 8th birthday, I found one stitched into the collar of a pink dress. My parents mailed it. They didn't come to the party. Lily pulled the dress from the box and her whole face lit up for exactly 3 seconds. Then she froze. Her small fingers traced the embroidery on the collar and she looked up at me. "What is this, Mommy?" I took the dress. My hands shook before I finished reading. The name on it wasn't hers. I didn't cry. I went to my laptop and started pulling bank statements. What I found behind a door at the end of my parents' hallway, I'll never unsee. By the next morning, they were calling nonstop. They had no idea the dress was the smallest thing I'd find. Welcome back to calm drama stories, where we sit with the quiet betrayals families never say out loud, and the women who finally set them right. Drop a comment, tell me where you're listening from, and be sure to subscribe. The morning of Lily's birthday started the way every important day in my family started, with me handling everything. I'd been up since 5. Streamers hung from the kitchen ceiling. A sheet cake sat in the fridge, decorated with butterflies because Lily had been obsessed with monarchs since spring. Daniel, my husband, had rigged a scavenger hunt through the backyard, hiding clues in mason jars, and our daughter was already bouncing off the furniture by 7 a.m. It should have been simple. 8 years old, cake, friends, presents, bedtime. But my parents had called the week before to say they wouldn't make it. My mother, Carol, said my father, Roger, had a cardiology follow-up that couldn't be moved. She said it twice, which is how I know she'd rehearsed it. I didn't push back. I never did. I was the daughter who adjusted, who covered, who picked up the phone and said, "Of course," before the other person finished the sentence. That's not a personality trait. It's a skill you develop when you grow up in a house where one child gets everything and the other gets leftovers with a lecture about gratitude. I told Lily that Grandma and Grandpa had sent a special package instead. Her eyes went wide. She'd always loved their gifts, not because they were expensive, but because she believed they picked each one just for her. I used to believe that, too. The box arrived by UPS around noon. White cardboard, my mother's handwriting in the shipping label, a strip of pink tissue paper poking through the seam. I set it on the present table between a stack of coloring books and a stuffed owl from Daniel's mother. I went back to frosting cupcakes. I had no idea that a $9 embroidery job was about to crack open 3 years of lies. I should tell you who I am outside of birthday parties because it matters later. I'm a CPA at a mid-size firm in Virginia. I handle audits, which means I read other people's financials for a living and flag the things they hoped nobody would notice. I'm good at it. I'm good at it because I learned early that nothing in my house came free. At least not for me. Growing up, my sister Emily got what she wanted by asking. I got what I needed by submitting a case. I'm not exaggerating. When I was 14 and needed new cleats for soccer, my mother made me write out why I deserved them. 3 paragraphs front and back of a notebook page. She read it at the kitchen table, crossed out a line about how my old pair had a hole in Theto, and told me she'd think about it. Emily got a new phone that same week. No essay required. I stopped asking after a while, got a job bussing tables at 15, and opened my own checking account at 16, community college, then night school for my CPA license while working full-time at a tax prep office that smelled like carpet cleaner and burnt coffee. Every dollar I earned without help. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing that as unfair and started treating it like proof I could survive anything. The problem with proof like that is you carry it everywhere. You become the person who fixes, the person who wires money when things get tight, the person who shows up with solutions while everyone else shows up with opinions. I thought that was love, being indispensable. I thought being useful and being valued were the same thing. It took a pink dress with someone else's name on it to teach me they aren't even close. Emily was 3 years older than me, and as far as my parents were concerned, the sun came up because she smiled at it. She had the kind of confidence that filled a room. Loud laugh, big plans, always the center of whatever story was being told at dinner. My mother adored her in a way that felt almost physical, like Emily was an extension of her own body. They dressed alike when Emily was small. They whispered together in the kitchen. They had rituals I was never invited into. I don't say this with bitterness. I say it because you need to understand the architecture of my family before I show you where the cracks are. My father, Roger, was quieter, a retired electrician with a bad heart and a habit of watching from the recliner without commenting. He loved both of us, I think, but he loved Carol more than he loved being fair. So he went along. The one person who saw it clearly was my grandmother, Ruth. My mother's mother, 86 now, sharp as a letter opener. She lived 15 minutes away, and every time she visited, she'd find a reason to sit with me alone. "You're the strong one," she told me once, peeling apples at her counter. "That's why they lean on you and forget to say thank you." I was 12. I didn't know what to do with that, so I shrugged and ate the apple. But I remembered. There's one more thing about our house. At the end of the upstairs hallway, past the bathroom and the linen closet, there was a door that stayed closed. Emily's old bedroom. After she left, my mother kept it exactly the way it was. Posters on the wall, lavender comforter, yearbooks stacked on the desk. Nobody talked about it. Nobody opened it. It was just there, like a tooth you can't stop tonguing. Emily didn't just leave. She detonated. For most of her 20s, she bounced between boyfriends, business ideas, and borrowed money. She'd call my parents at 2 in the morning asking for a wire transfer. She'd show up at Thanksgiving with a new man and a new plan and leave before the dishes were done. The plans always failed. The men always disappeared. The money never came back. By 33, she'd maxed out my parents' credit card, taken a $15,000 loan from their retirement fund, and convinced my father to co-sign a lease on an apartment she abandoned 4 months later. Then, 3 years ago, almost to the week, she vanished. No call, no forwarding address, just a text to my mother that said, "I need space. Don't look for me." Carol was gutted. She called me 6 times that first day. She called the police, who said, "A 34-year-old woman leaving voluntarily isn't a missing person." She called Emily's last boyfriend, who hung up. She sat in Emily's bedroom for 3 hours with the door locked. My father stood in the hallway with his hand on the knob and didn't go in. And here's the thing that should have told me everything. They never blamed Emily. Not once. Not for the credit card, not for the retirement money, not for the disappearing act. In my parents' version, Emily was a victim of bad luck, of bad men, of a world that didn't understand her. "She's just lost," my mother would say, pressing her palm flat on the kitchen table like she was holding something down. "She'll find her way back." I wanted to believe her. I sent money every month after that, for Dad's heart for the house. I never asked where it went. That was my mistake. Here's how the arrangement worked. After Emily vanished and my parents' finances cratered, I set up auto pay. $1,200 a month toward their mortgage. $400 for Roger's supplemental health insurance because Medicare didn't cover the cardiologist he needed. Another $110 for the family phone plan. Their 2 lines plus mine bundled. And every few months, Carol would call with something extra. A water heater, a property tax bill. They hadn't budgeted for an koi from one of Roger's episodes. I never said no. I'd pull up my spreadsheet, adjust the budget Daniel and I kept on the fridge, and send whatever she asked. "Honey, your father's heart can't wait," she'd say, her voice dropping to that soft, cracked register she saved for when she needed something. "You're the only one we can count on." I believed her. Or maybe I chose to believe her because the alternative, that I was pouring money into something I didn't understand, was too ugly to sit with. Daniel never complained, but he asked questions I didn't want to answer. "Your dad's insurance should cover most of the cardiac stuff," he said once, scrolling through a provider website on his phone. "Do they have a secondary plan or something? It's complicated," I told him. He looked at me for a long beat. Then set the phone down. Okay, it wasn't okay. He knew it. I knew it. But admitting the numbers didn't add up would have meant doing the one thing I'd spent my entire life avoiding, questioning whether my mother was telling me the truth. I'm a CPA. I reconcile other people's books for a living. I couldn't bring myself to open my own family's ledger. Not yet. Lily is the reason I finally opened it. My daughter is 8 years old, a head taller than most kids in her class, and the kind of child who reads field guides for fun. She collects rocks. She labels them with masking tape and stores them in an egg carton under her bed. She once spent 45 minutes explaining the difference between igneous and sedimentary to a cashier at Target who did not ask. She's the best thing I've ever done, and she's the thing I'd burn everything down to protect. What worried me about my parents wasn't anything dramatic. It was small. It was the way my mother started saying things. She reminds me so much of Emily at that age. Emily used to hold her fork like that. Look at those eyes, pure Emily. The first few times I let it go. Kids get compared to relatives. It's normal, but it kept happening. Every visit, Carol found a new way to map Emily onto my daughter. She bought Lily a lavender blanket, the same shade as the comforter in Emily's room. She signed Lily up for a kids' painting class without asking me because Emily loved top paint. When I picked Lily up from their house one Sunday, her hair was in 2 French braids, a style my mother used to do for Emily every school morning. Grandma did my hair like her special girl. Lily told me, climbing into the car seat. I gripped the steering wheel and said nothing. The door at the end of the hallway, I noticed it was open a crack the last time I walked past. Just an inch, just enough to see the lavender bedspread, untouched, but the closet light was on. Someone had been in there recently. I drove home and told myself it didn't mean anything. The party wound down around 4. Lily's school friends had been picked up. The backyard was littered with popped balloons and juice boxes, and Daniel was hosing cake off the patio table. Lily sat on the living room floor, surrounded by wrapping paper, already sorting her presents into categories. Books, art supplies, things to show her teacher. "Can I open Grandma's now?" she asked, reaching for the white box. "Go ahead, baby," shuddered the tissue paper. Inside was a dress, pink cotton, A&E with a Peter Pan collar and small pearl buttons down the front. Lily held it up and grinned. "It's so pretty." She pressed it against her chest and twirled. Then she stopped. She turned the collar over, running her thumb across the embroidery on the inside. White thread, neat cursive, stitched into the fabric like a label. "What is this, Mommy?" I crossed the room. I took the collar between my fingers and read the name. Emily, not Lily. Emily stitched into a brand new dress sized for an 8-year-old sent by my parents for my daughter's birthday. My hands started shaking. I kept my face still. Lily was watching me with that expression kids get when they sense something is wrong but can't name it yet. "Is that another girl's name?" she asked. It's a mistake, sweetheart," I managed. Grandma probably mixed up the order. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her books. I folded the dress and set it on the counter. Then I saw the card tucked into the bottom of the box, my mother's handwriting, loopy and deliberate. "For our little Emily, with all our love, Grandma and Grandpa. Our little Emily." Daniel came in from the patio, saw my face, and set down the hose. "What happened?" I handed him the card. He read it twice. Neither of us said a word. That night, after Lily was asleep and Daniel was reading in bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the dress folded beside me. I typed one message to my mother. Short, measured, the kind of text a CPA sends when she's not ready to accuse, but needs the number on record. "Mom, why does Lily's dress say Emily?" I hit send and set the phone face down on the counter. Then I went to bed. I didn't sleep much. I kept seeing the cursive on the collar. Neat, intentional, paid for. This wasn't a warehouse mix-up. Somebody placed an order. Somebody typed Emily into a personalization field and hit confirm. By 6 a.m., my phone had 11 missed calls, 6 from my mother, 5 from my father's line, which meant my mother using his phone after hers went to voicemail. I let them ring. That was new for me. My whole life I'd picked up by the second ring. Carol trained me to be available the way you train a dog to sit with repetition and the quiet threat of disappointment. Not answering felt like holding my breath underwater. Uncomfortable, disorienting, but clarifying. By 7, a text came through from Carol. "Myra, please call. It's not what you think. We can explain. I read it while pouring Lily's cereal. Daniel looked over my shoulder, read the screen, and poured himself a coffee without comment. He'd spent 10 years watching me drop everything when my parents called. The fact that I was sitting still, eating toast, letting the phone buzz on the counter, he knew something had shifted. He didn't push. He just set a second mug in front of me and sat down. I decided I wasn't going to call back. I was going to drive over and I wasn't going to tell them I was coming. My mother called again at 8:15 while I was buckling Lily into the car for day camp. I picked up this time not because I was ready, but because I needed to hear what version of the truth she'd built overnight. Sweetheart, thank God. Carol's voice was pitched high, relieved, already steering the conversation toward a landing she'd rehearsed. I got your text. Honey, it's just a name we've always loved. Your father and I thought it would be sweet. A family name, like a tradition. Emily isn't a family name, Mom. It's a person's name, a specific person. Silence, then. Well, of course. But that doesn't mean we weren't trying to. You had a dress custom embroidered with my sister's name and sent it to my 8-year-old daughter. She recalibrated. I could hear it. The breath, the slight pause before the new angle clicked into place. You're reading too much into this, Myra. You always do this. You take something simple and turn it into a whole investigation. That word investigation, I filed it. Your father needs his refill picked up. By the way, she added, shifting gears the way she always did when a conversation got too close to something real. The pharmacy on Route 9. Could you? I'll handle it, I said and hung up. I sat in the driveway for a minute. Lily was singing in the back seat, kicking her sandals against the car seat. Carol had done something interesting on that call. She'd used the present tense, a name we've always loved. Not loved, love. And she'd said, Emily always looks best in pink. Not looked. Looks as if Emily were still here. As if she were still 8 years old and waiting for a dress. 3 days later, the money call came. It always came. Roger had a follow-up appointment, Carol said, and the specialist wanted additional imaging, an echocardiogram, maybe a stress test. The copay alone is $400, she told me, her voice thin and tired. And you know your father won't ask. I know he won't, I said, because you always do. She ignored that. She developed a kind of selective deafness over the years. Anything that sounded like pushback simply didn't register. I told her I'd look into it and hung up. Then I did something I should have done 2 years ago. I pulled up the insurance portal. The supplemental plan I paid for, the one I'd been funding at $400 a month since Roger's first cardiac episode, covered specialist visits at 90% after the deductible, which had already been met in January. An echocardiogram COI under that plan was $42, not $400. $42. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen. The math was simple, and that's what made it ugly. If the insurance covered the bulk of Roger's treatment and I was also sending $1,200 a month for the mortgage and Carol was still asking for extra every few months, where was the rest of the money going? I opened a spreadsheet, fresh file, blank cells, the cursor blinking in A1. In the last 12 months alone, I'd sent my parents just over $23,000 beyond the mortgage and insurance autopay. Carol had attributed every dollar to Roger's health, house repairs, or property taxes. I pulled their county's property tax records online, paid in full, on time for the last 3 years. The money was going somewhere, just not where, she said. If you've ever been the one who quietly keeps a whole family standing and started to wonder where it all really goes, you already know this feeling. It's not anger at first. It's arithmetic. Stay with me. Comment. I see it. And let's keep going. I spent that evening cross-referencing everything. Bank statements from the last 36 months. Zelle confirmations. The auto-pay history for the mortgage surer, the insurance company, the phone plan. I printed it all because I'm the kind of person who needs paper. Daniel sat across from me, assembling Lily's new bookshelf from the birthday haul, and watched me sort pages into stacks without asking what I was doing. He'd ask when I was ready. He always did. By 1:00 p.m. I had 3 columns. Column 1, money I sent, itemized by month. Column 2, what Carol said it was for: heart stuff, house stuff, living expenses. Column 3, what I could actually verify. The gap between columns 2 and 3 was just over $41,000 across 3 years. $41,000 I couldn't account for. It wasn't in the mortgage. It wasn't in the medical claims. It wasn't in the property tax records. I leaned back in my chair and pressed my palms against my eyes. Daniel set down the Allen wrench. How bad? 41,000. Bad, he didn't whistle or swear. He just nodded slow like a man confirming something he'd suspected but never wanted to say out loud. You need to go over there, he said. Yeah, bring your phone, take pictures of anything you find, I know, and Myra, he waited until I looked at him. Check that room. He meant the one at the end of the hallway, the one with the door that was always closed. I drove to my parents' house on a Wednesday. I knew their schedule. Roger had his physical therapy at 10. 00 and Carol always drove him because she didn't trust him behind the wheel since the last episode. They'd be gone for at least 90 minutes. I let myself in with the spare key under the ceramic frog by the side door. The same frog that had been there since I was 9. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something stale underneath it. The way old houses do when the windows don't get opened enough. Everything looked the same. Roger's recliner with the permanent dent. Carol's cross-stitch sampler above the mantel. The kitchen table where I'd written my essay about soccer cleats still covered in the same vinyl tablecloth. I walked upstairs, past the bathroom, past the linen closet with the stuck door, past the framed school photos, Emily's large and centered, mine smaller, tucked to the side. And then I was standing at the end of the hallway. The door. It had been closed every time I'd visited for 3 years, sometimes locked. Once, when Lily had wandered toward it during a Thanksgiving visit, Carol had intercepted her so fast she nearly knocked the child over. That's Grandma's private room, sweetheart. Private. I put my hand on the knob. It turned. No lock this time. The door swung open on carpet that hadn't been vacuumed in weeks, and the lavender comforter on the bed was exactly as I remembered, smoothed, squared, hospital tight. The yearbooks were still on the desk. The poster of a beach sunset was still thumbtacked above the headboard. But the closet door was open and the light was on. Somebody had been in here recently, and they'd left the evidence sitting right in the open. The closet was full in a way it hadn't been before. Emily's old clothes were pushed to one side, high school hoodies, a prom dress, and a dry cleaning bag. And in their place, stacked neatly on the floor, were 4 cardboard boxes. I pulled out the first one. Inside, folded in tissue paper, were children's clothes, small, sized for a girl between 6 and 10. Dresses, cardigans, a pair of Mary Jane still in the shoebox. Every single item had the same embroidery on the collar or the tag. Emily. I set the first box down and opened the second. More clothes. A pink rain jacket with Emily stitched on the inside pocket. A set of monogrammed hair ribbons. A jewelry box with a tiny bracelet engraved. E.B. Emily Brandt. These weren't keepsakes from Emily's childhood. The tags were current. The sizes were current. Someone had been buying children's clothing in Emily's name in sizes that fit an 8-year-old, in sizes that fit Lily. My knees gave out and I sat on the carpet. The third box was different. No clothes. Inside was a manila folder thick with papers. I opened it and found a stack of Zelle transfer confirmations printed on plain white paper, each one showing a payment from my parents' bank account to a recipient in Reno, Nevada. The name on the receiving end was Emily Brandt. The amounts ranged from $300 to $800. Some months had 2 transfers. The oldest receipt was dated 3 years ago, 2 weeks after Emily's Don't Look for Me text. The most recent was last month. I flipped through them. Every dollar matched the timeline of Carol's requests to me. Every COI I'd covered, every water heater, every property tax panic. The real money had been rerouted. A pipeline from my checking account to an address in Nevada I'd never seen. At the bottom of the folder, paper clipped to the last receipt, was a handwritten note in my mother's cursive. Don't tell Myra, she wouldn't understand. I sat on the floor of my sister's shrine and did themeth. It's what I do. It's the only thing I could do. 36 months of transfers, average of $580 per payment, sometimes twice a month. The total, when I ran it on my phone calculator with the kind of numb precision that keeps accountants from screaming in parking lots, was just over $38,000. $38,000 of the $41,000 I couldn't account for. The gap closed with a click that felt like a bone snapping. My parents hadn't been struggling. Roger's heart was real, but the bills were covered because I covered them. The house was fine because I paid the mortgage. The phone worked because I funded the plan. Every extra dollar Carol squeezed out of me, every emergency, every trembling phone call about your father's heart. It had gone to Emily in Reno for 3 years. They knew where she was. They'd always known the "don't look for me" text. The grief, the locked bedroom door. It was theater. Carol's performance for an audience of one. The reliable daughter, the fixer. The one who would keep writing checks if she believed her father was dying and her sister was gone. I heard the front door open downstairs, keys dropping into the ceramic bowl on the hall table, Roger's slow footsteps, then the creak of the recliner, Carol's voice calling up the stairs. "Myra, is that your car outside?" I looked down at the folder in my lap. The note, "Don't tell Myra," stared back at me. I tucked my phone into my pocket. I'd taken pictures of every page. Then I stood up, closed the closet, and walked out of the room. Carol was at the bottom of the stairs when I came down. She looked at me, then looked past me at the hallway, at the door I'd left slightly ajar, and her face went through something. Not panic, recognition. The expression of a woman who'd been waiting for this moment and had already rehearsed her way through it. "You went in Emily's room," she said. "Not a question." I did. She pressed her lips together, smoothed her hands on her slacks, and sat down on the bottom step like she was settling in for a conversation she'd been planning for years. "Then you saw," she said. "You saw the things I've been collecting for her. They're not for her mom, they're sized for Lily. They're sized for Emily's daughter." That stopped me. Emily doesn't have a daughter. Carol looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not guilty, not defensive, but certain. Convinced. The way someone looks when they've lived inside a delusion so long, it's become load-bearing. "Lily could be our second chance," she said. The words hit the hallway like a slap. She kept going. "Emily made mistakes, I know that, but she's still mine. She'll come back. And when she does, she'll need to see that we kept her place, that we didn't forget. Lily is the right age, she has Emily's eyes, Myra. You've always known that." I stared at her. My mother was not asking for forgiveness. She was asking me to understand that she'd been slowly, meticulously replacing my daughter with the ghost of my sister. And she thought that was love. Roger stood in the living room doorway. He didn't speak. His eyes were red, and he gripped the door frame like it was the only thing holding him up. He knew. He had always known. I picked up my bag, walked past both of them, and drove home without saying another word. I didn't cry in the car. I wanted to. There was a pressure behind my ribs that felt like a fist trying to open. But I kept both hands on the wheel and drove the speed limit and breathed through my nose the way I do during tax season, when a client's books are so tangled I can't find the starting thread. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the fist had unclenched. What replaced it was colder, clearer. I sat in the garage with the engine off and opened my phone. Photos of every receipt. Photos of the note. Photos of the boxes, 4 monogrammed dresses, 3 cardigans, the bracelet, a folder full of transfers to Reno. I didn't have a speech. I didn't have a plan. Not yet. But I had the numbers. And the numbers don't lie. They don't gaslight you. They don't call you 6 times before breakfast and tell you you're reading too much into things. Daniel was putting Lily to bed when I came inside. I waited until her door clicked shut. Then I sat him down at the kitchen table and laid it out. Everything, the boxes, the receipts, Emily and Reno, Carol's delusion about Lily. $38,000. He listened without interrupting. When it finished, he rubbed his face with both hands and said one thing. "So, what are you going to do?" "What I do for a living," I told him, "build a file, lay out every line item, and then I'm going to show them, all of them, exactly where the money went." Them, everyone. Carol wanted me to be the only one who didn't know, so now everyone's going to know. He nodded. "Okay," he paused. "You sure you're okay?" No, I said. But I'm accurate. That'll have to be enough for now. I spent the next 4 days in CPA mode. Every night after Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and my laptop, and I built the file. Not a diary, not a grievance list, a proper reconciliation, the kind I'd submit to a client if their CFO had been skimming. I started with my bank records, 3 years of outgoing transfers, Zelle payments, and auto-pay confirmations. I printed each one highlighted. Then I pulled the insurance claims from the supplemental plan I'd been paying for Roger. Every appointment, every COI, every explanation of benefits, I cross-referenced them with Carol's requests. The pattern was surgical. Every time Carol called with a new expense, a stress test, a medication change, an ER visit, the real cost was a fraction of what she quoted me. The surplus went to Reno. I traced the mortgage payments current every month covered by my auto-pay. The property taxes paid also by me indirectly. The phone plan active. My account. Then I dug deeper and found something I'd forgotten. A co-signed personal loan from 3 years ago. Carol had asked me to co-sign when Emily first disappeared, saying they needed a bridge until Roger's disability paperwork went through. The disability had been approved within weeks. The loan was still open. Balance $6,200. My name was on it, my credit, my liability. I added it to the file. By Thursday night, I had a 23-page document tabbed, color-coded. Every claim Carol had made in 3 years matched against the verifiable record with the variance noted in red. $41,000 in total outflows. $38,000 confirmed rerouted to Emily. The remaining $3,000 unaccounted for, probably cash, probably untraceable. I closed the folder and labeled the tab brand Family Reconciliation. Daniel looked at it from across the table. That's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. On Friday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number 775 area code. Reno. I almost didn't answer. Then I did because I was done not knowing things. Myra, it's Emily. Her voice was lighter than I remembered. Warmer, even like she was calling to catch up over coffee, not crawling out of 3 years of silence. Hey, listen. I know it's been a while, but Mom said things are tight right now. And I was wondering if I could what, Emily? Just help out a little like you always do. Family helps family, right? I held the phone away from my face and stared at it, the way you stare at an appliance that just caught fire. Then I brought it back. Are you in Reno? Pause, a long one. Mom told you. Nobody told me anything. I'm an accountant. Where do you think I learned to read a paper trail? Another pause, then softer. Look, I know how it looks. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you drained our parents, disappeared, and then let them funnel my money to you for 3 years while telling me it was for Dad's heart. That's not it's more complicated than the dress turned out cute, by the way. Dead silence. She knew about the dress. Of course she did. She'd probably picked it out. I didn't mean for what? For my daughter to find someone else's name sewn into her birthday present. Emily exhaled long and shaky. And for a half-second I heard something that might have been shame. Then it passed. I'm going through a hard time, Myra. You don't know what it's like. You're right, I said. I don't. I hung up. Then I added Emily confirmed contact aware of dress to the file. I know a lot of you are yelling at your screen right now. Cut them off already. I hear you. But I needed it airtight first. If you've ever had to stay calm while everything inside you burned, hit that like button and stay with me. That same afternoon, I called Carol not to argue, not to cry, to present findings. Mom, I've reviewed the financials. Myra, don't start. In the last 36 months, I've sent you and Dad a total of $41,000 beyond the mortgage and insurance ought to pay. $38,000 of that was transferred to Emily in Reno. She went quiet. I could hear the television in the background. Some daytime court show, a judge banging a gavel. You had no right to go through my things. You had no right to take my money and lie about where it went. It wasn't lying. It was we were protecting you. You'd never understand. Emily needs Emily is 37 years old. She's still my daughter and I'm not. That landed different than I expected. Not like a weapon, like a fact I'd been carrying for 30 years without ever saying out loud. Carol recovered fast. She always did. If you make this into something, Myra, you'll be the one who tears the family apart. Everyone will know what you did. What I did. Walking away from your own parents, your sick father. Over money, over lies. Mom, don't you dare. I'll see you Sunday. I hung up. She just told me her strategy. She was going to frame this as me abandoning them. She was going to rally the family. She was going to turn the table into a tribunal with me on trial. Fine. I had 23 pages that said otherwise. Let her set the stage. I'd bring the script. Saturday morning, the day before the dinner, my mother made a mistake. She called to ask if I was bringing Lily on Sunday. I said no. Carol said fine, but then, and I don't know if she forgot the dress, forgot the boxes, forgot everything we'd said on the phone. She added, I bought the cutest little sweater for Emily. Would you bring her measurements? She meant Lily. She was talking about my daughter. She just used the wrong name, or the name she decided was the right one. Mom, did you just call my daughter Emily? Silence. Then you know what I meant. Say her name. What? Say my daughter's name. Mom, a beat. 2, Lily. I said Lily. No, you didn't. I hung up for the last time. 2 hours later, Daniel came home from a job site to find me sitting on Lily's bedroom floor, watching her sort her rock collection. She looked up at me with those brown eyes, her eyes, not Emily's, not anyone else's, and said, Mommy, who is Emily? Grandma keeps calling me that, and I don't know who that is. I pulled her into my lap. She was getting too big for it, all elbows and knees, but she curled in anyway. Emily is your aunt, I said. She lives far away. She has her own name, and you have yours. Good, Lily said. I like my name. I like your name, too, baby. I kissed the top of her head and made a decision that had been building for weeks, but crystallized in that moment. I wasn't just going to show my parents the receipts tomorrow. I was going to make sure everyone at that table understood Lily is Lily, and nobody was going to write her into someone else's story. Not while I was breathing. That afternoon, while Lily napped and Daniel was out getting groceries, I sat at my laptop and started pulling plugs. First, the mortgage auto pay. I logged into the servicer's portal and canceled the recurring transfer effective immediately. Confirmation email received, then the supplemental insurance. I called the carrier, asked about dropping a dependent, my father, from the plan I was paying for. The representative walked me through the form. It would take effect at the end of the billing cycle, 30 days. I filled it out and submitted it. The phone plan was next. I called the carrier, removed my parents' 2 lines from the family bundle, and absorbed the small penalty for mid-cycle changes. Their phones would stay active until the billing period ended, then go dark. Finally, the co-signed loan. I called the lender and asked about removing myself as co-signer. They said I couldn't without a refinance or full payoff. I noted that in the file and flagged it for follow-up. I'd deal with it after Sunday. Every cancellation was documented. Dates, confirmation numbers, screenshots of the portal pages. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it the way I'd advise any client who discovered a financial dependent had been diverting funds. Cut the exposure. Document the action and prepare for the conversation. It wasn't revenge. It was a reconciliation of my accounts, of my boundaries, of the ledger I'd been keeping wrong for 30 years. Daniel came home and set the bags on the counter. He saw the confirmation emails still open on my screen. How much were we sending them total? Just over $1,700 a month plus extras. He leaned against the counter and exhaled. That's almost half a car payment. That's exactly half a car payment, I said. He looked at me. Good. Carol had called the family dinner a get-together. She'd framed it to the relatives as a long-overdue Sunday meal. Nothing dramatic, just family catching up. But I knew the choreography. I'd watched her run this play before. Once when Emily dropped out of cosmetology school, and Carol needed to rewrite the narrative before Aunt Diane heard it from someone else, the cast would be familiar. Grandma Ruth, who lived nearby and never missed a meal. Aunt Diane, Carol's younger sister, who admired Carol and trusted her version of everything. Uncle Pete, Diane's husband, who mostly ate in silence and agreed with whoever spoke loudest. Couple off-cousins, maybe filling seats and providing the ambient pressure of an audience. Carol wanted numbers. She wanted me outnumbered, surrounded by people who'd already heard her version. Myra is pulling away. Myra stopped helping. Myra is breaking her sick father's heart over a misunderstanding about a dress. She was counting on me to fold, to sit quietly while the table turned on me, the way I'd sat quietly my entire childhood while Emily got the spotlight, and I got the responsibility. She didn't know I'd changed the math. I ironed the pink dress, the one with Emily on the collar, folded it into a canvas tote bag alongside the 23-page file. I zipped the bag shut and set it by the front door. Daniel offered to come. I shook my head. Stay with Lily. I need you here when I get back. You're going alone. I'm going prepared. He handed me my car keys and kissed my forehead. Give them hell. I'm going to give them a spreadsheet. I told him that's worse. She wanted an audience. I happened to need witnesses. I pulled up to my parents' house at 10:06. The driveway was full. Diane's Subaru, Pete's truck, Grandma Ruth's Lincoln Town car that she still drove at 86. Despite everyone's objections, through the front window, I could see them gathered in the dining room. The good china was out. Carol had even lit the candles. I walked in carrying the tote bag over my shoulder. Carol met me at the door with a hug so tight it felt like a tourniquet. I'm so glad Yao came, sweetheart, she whispered loud enough for the room to hear. We've all been so worried about you. She led me to the table. Grandma Ruth was seated at the far end, her napkin already in her lap, her eyes sharp behind her bifocals. Diane sat across from her next to Pete, who was buttering a roll. Two cousins I hadn't seen since Christmas, Tyler and Bate, filled the end seats, looking mildly uncomfortable the way people do when they've been summoned to a dinner that's clearly about something. Roger sat at the head of the table. He looked older than he had a week ago. His hands rested flat on either side of his plate, and he didn't look at me when I sat down. Carol served pot roast. She passed the green beans. She complimented Ruth's blouse and asked Diane about her garden. It was a masterclass in establishing normally before dropping the hammer. I ate. I waited. I kept the tote bag on the floor beside my chair. By the time the plates were cleared and Carol brought out a peach cobbler she'd probably baked that morning for exactly this performance, she was ready. She set the cobbler down, folded her hands, and turned to the table. I asked everyone here because I need your help. Carol looked around the table the way a director surveys a stage, checking sight lines, confirming everyone was in position. As some of you may know, she began, her voice catching just enough to sell it. Myra has decided to stop helping us financially. Your father, Roger, is 67 years old with a heart condition, and Myra has cut off the support we depend on. She let that sit. Diane's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Ruth said nothing. Tyler shifted in his seat. Carol continued, pressing her palms flat on the table. A gesture I recognized from childhood. The one she used when she wanted to seem grounded and reasonable. I'm not asking anyone to take sides. I'm asking you as family to help Myra understand that walking away from your parents, from your sick father, isn't something you do over a disagreement about a child's dress. Shell looked at me with an expression calibrated to project hurt, not hostility. I'd seen that expression 1,000 times. It was the face she wore when she wanted you to feel sorry for her without noticing she'd just accused you of something. Diane turned to me. Her voice was careful. The voice of someone who'd been briefed but not fully convinced. Myra, is that true? You stopped helping with Roger's medical bills? I stopped all financial support. Yes, but his heart. Carol said the specialist, Diane, I'll get to that. Roger stared at his plate. His hands hadn't moved. He was a man sitting in the middle of a conversation he'd known was coming and had done nothing to prevent. Not because he was helpless, but because helpless was easier than honest. Carol wasn't done. I just want us to be a family again. That's all I've ever wanted. After everything we've been through with Emily, let's talk about Emily, I said. I reached down and unzipped the tote bag. The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of a pause, but the airless quiet of a table that knows something is about to land. I set the folder on the table first. 23 pages tabbed, color-coded, the label facing Carol brand Family Reconciliation. Then I pulled out the dress. Pink cotton, Peter Pan collar, pearl buttons. I unfolded it slowly and laid it flat on the table next to the cobbler, the collar facing up so everyone could see the embroidery. White thread, neat cursive Emily. Ruth leaned forward, adjusting her bifocals. Diane's lips parted. Pete set his napkin down. "This is the dress my parents sent my daughter for her 8th birthday," I said. My voice was low and even. I didn't rush. "The name on it is not my daughter's name. My daughter's name is Lily." I opened the folder and turned it toward the table. "This is a 3-year financial record. Every month I sent my parents money for Dad's heart, for the house, for emergencies." Mom described on the phone. In the last 36 months, that total exceeded $41,000. I tapped the red column. 38,000 of that was transferred to Emily in Reno, Nevada, where she's been living for 3 years. Diane's hand went to her mouth. Ruth closed her eyes. Mom and Dad knew where Emily was the entire time. I continued. "They used the money I sent, money I believed was keeping Dad alive, and rewrote it. Every fake copy, every phantom water heater, every we're struggling phone call, it went to Emily. And they've been buying children's clothing embroidered with Emily's name and my daughter's size, keeping a closet full of it in Emily's old bedroom." I looked at my mother. She was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "My daughter has a name. It isn't Emily." Carol stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor and knocked into the wall behind her. "You had no right," she shouted. "You went through my house. You went through Emily's room. You had no right to touch her things." "Her things," Diane said, staring at the dress on the table. "Carol, those Era children's clothes. Therefore, Emily, therefore, when she comes back." Carol's voice cracked and climbed. The controlled, rehearsed woman from 5 minutes ago was gone. In her place was something raw, not remorse, not guilt, but fury at being exposed. "You don't understand what it's like," she said, turning to the table, searching for an ally. "She's my baby. She's always been my baby. I was keeping her place. I was making sure she had something to come home to. With my money," I said. "You were always jealous." She spun toward me, tears running, finger pointed. "From the time you were 5 years old, you couldn't stand that Emily was special, that she was mine in a way you never." She stopped herself, but the sentence was already in the room. Ruth set her hands flat on the table. Her voice was thin and hard, like a wire pulled taut. "Sit down, Carol." Carol sat, not because she wanted to, but because Ruth was 86 and still the only person in the family who could make Carol Branto be a 2-word sentence. Then Roger spoke. The first words he'd said all evening. His voice was low, cracked, exhausted. "I knew," he said. He wasn't looking at anyone. He was looking at the dish of cobbler like it held the last 30 years of his marriage. "I knew she was sending the money. I knew about the clothes. I let her do it because I was too tired to fight." He paused. "I'm sorry, Myra. I waited for more. There wasn't any." Ruth spoke next. She looked at me across the table, past the dress, past the folder, past her own daughter who was crying into a dinner napkin, and said, "I always knew they leaned on you too hard. I told your mother that when you were 12. I told her again when Emily left." She turned to Carol. "I told you and you said I was being dramatic." Diane was staring at the receipts. She'd pulled a page toward her and was reading the dates, the amounts, the routing. She looked up at Carol with an expression I recognized, the look of someone whose version of reality just collapsed. "You told me Myra was being selfish," Diane said quietly. "You called me 3 times this week and told me she was abandoning you over a dress. It's more complicated than it's $41,000, Carol, and a closet full of clothes with the wrong child's name on them. That's not complicated. I don't even know what that is." Pete said nothing. Tyler looked at his plate. Bate had her phone under the table. Nobody was eating the cobbler. The room had shifted in the way rooms do when a story gets rewritten in front of the people who believed the original. Not with shouting, not with a verdict, just with the slow, heavy recognition that the person who'd been doing the narrating was the one who'd been lying. I didn't need them to take sides. I didn't need anyone to say I was right. I just needed them to see what had been happening behind the closed door at the end of the hallway and decide for themselves. I stood up. The chair didn't scrape. I pushed it back slowly, the way you close a book when you've reached the last page. "I'm not going to yell," I said. "I'm not going to threaten or make demands. I'm going to tell you what's already done." I looked at Carol, then at Roger. I've canceled the mortgage ought to pay. I've removed Dad from the supplemental insurance plan I was funding. I've dropped your phone lines from my account. I've flagged the cosign loan for resolution. Carol made a sound, half gasp, half moan. Roger closed his eyes. I don't hate you, I continued. I don't hate Emily. You can send her every dollar you earn. That's your choice. But you will not use my money to fund it. And you will not use my daughter to replace the child you lost. I picked up the folder. I left the dress on the table. Let them look at it. Let them read the name. Love Emily all you want, I said from the doorway. You will not rebuild her out of my child. Ruth nodded once. Deanne wiped her eyes. Pete stared at the tablecloth. Carol said nothing. For the first time in my life, my mother had nothing to say. I walked to my car, set the folder on the passenger seat, and drove home under a sky that was just starting to go dark. My hands were steady. My breath was even. I turned on the radio and let a song I didn't know fill the silence. It was the quietest drive of my life, and I don't think I'd ever been more awake. The call started that night. Carol, Roger, Carol again from Roger's phone. Then Diane gently asking if I was okay. Then Carol from a number I didn't recognize. The landline I'd forgotten they still had. I let everyone go to voicemail. The messages followed a pattern that would have been funny if it weren't my family. First pleading, then guilt, then anger, then pleading again. Carol left one at midnight that said, "You can't just walk away from your parents, Myra. The Bible says," I deleted it before she finished the verse. Over the next 2 weeks, the fallout arrived in pieces, the way it does when you remove the floor from under a house that thought it was standing on its own. The mortgage surer sent a notice. Without my auto pay, the first payment was late. Carol called Diane in a panic, and Diane, who now had 23 pages of context, told her to call a financial counselor. Roger's supplemental insurance lapsed at the end of the billing cycle. He was still covered by Medicare, still had access to his cardiologist, but the premium plan with the lower copays was gone. He'd have to use the public tier Licky else. Their phone lines went dark. Carol showed up at a Verizon store and opened a prepaid plan with a number nobody recognized, and Emily. Emily went quiet. The Zelle transfers stopped because there was nothing to transfer. 3 weeks of silence from Reno. No calls, no texts, no family helps family. When the money dried up, so did the love. That told me everything I needed to know about what family meant to my sister. The relatives knew the truth. Now, Carol couldn't control the narrative anymore, not with Diane carrying a photocopy of the receipts and Ruth telling anyone who'd listened that she'd warned her daughter for years. A month later, the house was quieter than it had ever been. And I mean that in the best way. Lily started 2nd grade. She wore a new dress on the first day, yellow cotton, white buttons, her name stitched on the inside collar in blue thread. Lily, I'd ordered it myself. She ran her finger over the embroidery before putting it on and grinned at me like it was the best thing she'd ever owned. "It says my name," she said. "It does." Daniel and I recalculated our budget that first weekend without the $1,700 a month going to my parents. We didn't celebrate. It wasn't a windfall. It was money that had always been ours. We put half into Lily's college fund, and the other half toward the car Daniel's truck had been wheezing about needing to become. Saturday mornings were different now. No phone ringing at 7 a.m., no voicemail from Carol about a plumber or a COI or a crisis that needed my credit card. No guilt sitting in my chest like a second breakfast. I drove past my parents' house once by accident, taking a wrong turn coming back from the grocery store. The curtains were drawn. Roger's truck was in the driveway. The ceramic frog was still by the side door. I didn't stop. The door at the end of their hallway, I don't know if it's open or closed now. It isn't mine to wonder about anymore. Some doors you walk past your whole life, and one day you realize the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to open them. Cutting them off didn't make me the villain in my family's story. It made me the author of my daughter's. That's my story. A pink dress, a wrong name, and a folder full of receipts. If this reminded you to follow the money, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next.